Hello, this is Shelby Shadwell for the Wyoming Promise conference call tonight with two candidates. And it looks like right now we have on Pam Marks and Wendy Dodson, but we, of course, plan to have many more join us here at 7 p.m. So just stick on the line. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
Well, actually, it's David, her husband. So you're going to actually have David instead of Wendy.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dave. Thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. And,
no, not at all. I'm glad I could do it.
Yeah, thank you so much. We plan to have quite a few people on the call, and Mary Throne as well is going to join the call, and we're going to put you folks up first. And thank you so much for your time. We know how valuable it is.
So is each individual pin correspond to a person?
You know what? That's a great question, Dave.
Because Wendy was sitting here and she read the pin off to me, and then it came up as Wendy. So anyway.
Well, that's a good question. We've generally had great success with these conference calls, and we haven't had to dive into the nitty gritty like that. But
well, good.
If Wendy would also like to join,
No. I was just curious. I was impressed if we were all encoded. That's all. I was curious. Nothing more than that. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Dave, so much for joining. We're going to wait a couple of minutes minutes here for join. People do tend to join at around 7 or 7:02 and things like that. But we definitely appreciate your time. So thank you so much for being on the call.
Okay. I'll stand by.
Okay. Thank you. And for those folks that are joining right now, I can see a number of folks joining on. We do keep everybody muted at the beginning of the call. But if you have a question or concern, feel free to press a number on your dial pad, and of course that will raise your hand, and we can unmute you to ask a question. We're very honored this evening to have a couple of great candidates on the call tonight to talk about this important issue and the issue of money in politics, as we're all very passionate about. So again, as you join, and we do have a number of folks joining, hang out on the line here, and we'll get going here pretty soon when we get enough folks on the call. So thank you again for joining us. Some of you who are on a little bit early here will hear me say a couple of things more than once, just as people join the call. Again, we have everybody muted at the beginning, and we will unmute you as if you press a number on your dial pad if you do have a question. But we're very honored tonight to have a couple of great candidates on the call. So right now I see Ken Chestek, our chair, has joined the call, so I'm going to unmute Ken. If he wants to say anything at this point, we do have candidate Dodson on the call as well, who is muted. But Ken, if you have anything to say as people join, feel free.
Yes, thank you, Shelby, and thank you all for joining. People are jumping on the call now. It's just exactly 7 o'clock right now, so let's wait a few more minutes and wait for a few more folks to join the call. The plan for tonight is we're going to hear from Mary Throne and from Dave Dodson, who are both running for statewide office in Wyoming. So we're going to let them have about 10 minutes each to talk about their take on money in politics, why it's an important issue for them, and how they would hopefully work on that issue if elected. And then we'll leave about 10 minutes for some conversation with them, questions and answers. And I know both of them, I think, have a 7:30 commitment. So we'll make sure that we get them on their way by 7:30. And then after that, we have some important business to talk about, some canvassing opportunities and some other announcements about how the effort is going and what we can do to keep it ramped up and keep it rolling. So let's wait another minute or two. Shelby, anything else you want to say before we start the business part of the meeting? Shelby, are you there? Shelby, you're still muted.
Oh, can you hear me?
And now I hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. We as people join, and we do have a number of folks that have signed up for the call. We just want to thank everybody for joining first and foremost, but also thank you to the candidates that will be joining us, Dave Dodson again and Mary Throne. We appreciate their time. We know how valuable that is. And again, everybody is muted at the beginning of the call. But if you do have a question or concern, just press a number on your dial pad and we will see that on our screens, and we can address that question or concern as we move forward. So at this point, Ken, whenever you're ready, we can kind of get going. Mary Throne has just joined us, it looks like, so we might be able to get going as soon as you're ready, Ken.
Okay. My computer's running a little slow, so I don't see Mary on my screen. If she's on yours, that means your screen is working better than mine is. So, as I said, we have two candidates on the call, Mary Throne and Dave Dodson. Why don't we go with Dave first? And Dave, if you want to, I'm going to unmute you. Dave, if you want to just introduce yourself and let us know what the issue of money in politics means to you and how you're going to help us solve the problem.
Sure, and then I'll try to be brief so that we can answer questions that might be more interesting for people on the call. But
okay.
I developed I call it Dave Dodson's Plan to Put Wyoming First, and you can read it online or you can download it, or if you hit a button on my website, we'll mail you one along with a hat. But it's got 6 chapters in it, and one of the chapters is Campaign Finance Reform - Not Just Talk. And it opens with a quote from Senator Simpson saying the sole purpose of giving is access, which of course plays well with this crowd because of Senator Simpson's role in Wyoming Promise. But I have not run for office before, and I kind of sat back as a voter with a little bit of disgust with the influence of money in politics, but kind of worrying about my own world and not super involved in it, just didn't like it, thought it was wrong. And now I'm running for office for the first time. And I have really learned how damaging the role of money is in democracy. And our system only works if we have one man, one vote, and not guy with a bag of money has, more votes than the person who doesn't. So, and I've seen it in so many different little ways, and I don't want this to come off in the wrong way, but I was in business for myself and things worked out pretty well. And so I did end up with a fair amount of money, but it's just because of the profession that I chose to be in business. I could have chosen to be a school teacher or something else. And I'm running against John Barrasso. And if I didn't have a bunch of my own money, there'd be absolutely no way that I could run against him. And if no one was running against him in a primary, then you don't have democracy, especially in a one-party state. But even in a multi-party state, we need to have competitive primaries, and then we need to have competitive general elections. And it's a quote that I have that you guys were nice enough to put on your website, but when I was thinking about running for office and I was talking to people and they would say, well, oh boy, John Barrasso, that's going to be tough. And I was kind of thinking, I don't think the guy's done anything for 2 terms, so why would this be so tough? And they'd say, oh, he's got so much money. And I thought that was just sickening to think that the criteria for whether you could run against someone was how much money they had amassed on the payroll. I mean, a senator makes $174,000 a year, spending 27% of the time fundraising to try to break down democracy. So in my Dave Dodson's Plan to Put Wyoming First, which I referenced earlier that people can download or you can have a hard copy or both, I have 3 specific things that I think are relatively straightforward rule changes for campaign finance reform. They are not a substitute for anything that Wyoming Promise is doing. It's just in addition, but the 3 things that I have are rule changes that don't involve Supreme Court or constitutional changes and so forth. So I think it's at least a start. And the first one is that a senator or congressman can't solicit or accept any campaign contributions until 6 months prior to re-election. Now, that's a little bit less impactful for a congressman who runs every 2 years, but imagine a world in a senator where for 5.5 years they were not allowed to take or solicit a contribution. Then the second one is, and by the way, I'm doing all this stuff, whether the rule change is successful or not, and I've told everybody that if you send me money after I'm in office, I'll send it back. Second is that, a senator can't or a congressman can't take any money from any type of, entity, political action committee and so forth, for reasons that everybody on this call respects. And then the third is that there's two types of political action committees, all of which I've learned as a result of being a candidate. And one, the members or the contributors are secret, and I don't think that should be okay. So those are three rule changes that I would like to try to get done right away. And since I'm running for U.S. Senate and they're 6-year terms, imagine a world where our senator spent 5.5 years only working for us, and then if they wanted to run for a second term, they had a window of time of 6 months to fundraise, and then after that, I'm also for term limits, and that's it. So if a 2-term senator only has 6 months in the middle to do a little bit of fundraising, and after that, every donor knows that the guy can't run again, I think that could have a big influence on money in politics. So I should just leave it at that, or maybe I would like to leave it at this, is that and term limits, and I do believe that they relate together, are two of the things that we don't really have an option if we want to have a true democracy in this country. I mean, we have to do this. And I've watched the influence of money on, my country, but also in this race. And one of the things I care a lot about is the healthcare situation in this state and in this country, although it's way worse in this state than anywhere else. And the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry are the biggest contributors to Congress, and they are the largest contributor to, our current senator. And the pharmaceutical industry gives money to 95 out of 100 senators. Well, they can't find Wyoming on a map, let alone, Laramie or Casper or Sheridan, where I'm at today. They don't care about that. They're just trying to buy votes. And Senator Barrasso takes more money from the pharmaceutical industry than all but 3 senators in America. And they're not giving him money because they care about what's happening in, Fort Laramie or Buffalo or Rock Springs or Rollins. They're giving him money because they're buying votes. And that's not democracy. So that's why I care so much about it and why I'm so supportive of Wyoming Promise.
Thank you so much, Dave. And stay on the line. I'm going to unmute Mary Throne now. And Mary, who's running for governor. I know, Mary, you've got something going on at 7:30, so what we're going to do is let you speak for a little bit, and then we're going to throw it open for questions. So if you have a question, think about it and press 1 on your keypad, and we will call on you after Mary's done with her introduction. So, Mary, the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to all of you. It's Frontier Days in Cheyenne, so I'm stepping out of a Frontier Days event to be with all of you. The debate that we had in Sheridan a few weeks ago was just really sort of a shock to me. I did not expect to be the only candidate who was willing to say that Citizens United was wrongly decided and that I supported the efforts of Wyoming Promise. I've always thought of Wyoming Promise as a nonpartisan, sensible solution to what everybody agrees is wrong with politics today, which is too much money. Personally, I've also experienced the lack of transparency that we have in Wyoming in our own laws. And I think as governor, I am committed to working to provide as much transparency and reporting as we can, under the state of the existing law, while all of you work to overturn Citizens United, because there are some things we could do at the state level to just shine some light on where money comes from and how it's spent that I think would be really illuminating to the voters.
Okay, thank you, Mary. So are there any questions or comments, or who has if you have a question for either Mary or for Dave Dodson, please press number 1 on your keypad. And Shelby, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you again to both candidates, Mary Throne and Dave Dodson, for being on the call. Of course, this is a really important issue, and you both grasp the depth of it. As candidate Dodson noted when he was talking, what is it like? I would ask Mary or Dave. What is it like to run against big money? I mean, John Barrasso raises a great deal of money, as do many of the other candidates in races here in Wyoming. How does this affect Wyomingites and folks that want to run for office in Wyoming specifically? And we have Dave and available.
Yeah, Mary, you want to take that? You want to take that first?
Sure. What we have in Wyoming right now, I think on the Republican side, is a lot of people who can self-fund. So, that's kind of a different issue. But I'm really proud of our campaign because while we do have some large donations, we are largely funded by many small donations. And I think that grassroots support over time will help me. But it is a challenge. The Republicans, and I am being a little partisan here, and I apologize for that, but certainly in Wyoming, they have the ability to raise a lot more money quickly than any Democrat in the race, even if they aren't multimillionaires themselves. So again, I think the key is just catching our antiquated election campaign reporting laws up with the rest of the world. And maybe it's not a solution, but it would improve the situation.
I would add so I'll add I agree with everything that Mary said. We don't want it is just plain not democracy if the only two people that can run are incumbents and wealthy people. That's so wrong. But I have an interesting situation here because I'm running against an incumbent who has an infinite amount of money. And he has so much money he could do anything he wants in the state of Wyoming. And so when I fundraise, and this is something that I didn't realize until I was in the process, is that if I call up a Democrat or someone who's Democratic leaning, who might be a friend of mine who is like-minded, they go, oh, I don't give money to Republicans. And then I'll call up someone who is maybe Republican. They go, oh, I don't give money to people who are running against incumbents. And, that's just another maybe more subtle version of where this sort of money in politics thing breaks down. So what that means is that if someone's running against a well-heeled incumbent and they don't have money in their own pocket, even in the state of Wyoming, no one's going to give them any money. So they're stuck. So, Charlie, who, is running alongside me for the Senate office, who, become a friend of mine. Charlie's a great guy, but Charlie's a priest. Okay. And he didn't pick the career that I picked, and I didn't pick the career he picked, even though he picked a noble profession. So, Charlie has to scrape around for gas money. That's not right. I believe I'm the better candidate between myself and Charlie, but Charlie and I should have a fair fight. And he doesn't have a fair fight against me, and I barely have a fair fight against John Barrasso. That's just not democracy.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take some other questions in the order that I spotted them. Diane Ernst, I saw your hand go up first. So, Diane, you have the mic. Diane, are you with us? Hang on. Oops, wait a second. There we go. Try again. Diane, you have the mic.
Hello?
Yeah, now I got you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. I was just wondering, I was going to ask Mary and maybe anybody else that happened to hear the debate that I totally missed. Were none of the other candidates for governor in favor of Wyoming Promise? Were they lukewarm? They didn't know what it was? Were they actually opposed to it? I was just curious where that stand was on those other people.
I guess if you, I was there. I'd encourage anybody to, listen to the debate rather than take my word for it. But they were all opposed, basically. I was the only one who said I had signed the petition, and I had encouraged every member of my family to sign the petition. Also, there were specific references from some candidates about the need to protect the First Amendment, and that Citizens United protected the First Amendment. So it was shocking to me.
This is Ken. I watched the debate, and there was one other candidate who didn't really seem to understand the question, so he didn't really oppose it or say much about it. He was kind of confused, but pretty much everybody else said they were opposed to it, which shocked me as well. And the basis for the for the answer was that we're opposed to free speech, which is just nuts. We're in favor of free speech for everybody, and not just for a select few. So that was a complete misconstruction of what we stand for, but that's what happened.
Who was the one who was confused?
I'm sorry?
Which was the candidate that was confused?
I forget. I don't want to slander somebody.
I think it was Rex, the other Democrat. If the person standing to the left of me, I think was I'm not sure he heard the question clearly because he has hearing issues. So.
Oh, okay. That could be what it was. Okay. So Lynn Horton Morrison, I saw your hand up next. So Lynn, you've got the mic.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you to Mary and is it David Dodson, right?
Yep.
I apologize. Okay, thanks. Thanks for attending the call, and thank you, Mary Throne. I do want to say I did watch the debate, and I'm gonna just have a comment, and then I'm going to have a question. So the comment I have for Mary Throne is that I did watch the debate, and Mary, I have to commend you for standing up so strongly when that question was asked, and you said, almost the equivalent of, not yes, but hell yes, I support Wyoming Promise and what they're doing, and you were very strong about it. And one of the trends that I saw in that debate was I really felt like the Republicans had all decided what they were going to say, and they were all going to be a united front. And I think they did that, and they also did it on another question that had to do with LGBT rights. And I really felt like they threw you under the bus on that one, because you were saying we've got a problem with that, and they were saying, oh, problem? No problem. We're good people. We don't, That was my impression of it, and I thought, oh, they're just trying to throw her right under the bus. My question for you, Mary, this is going to be a kind of an interesting question. It's a strategic question. So in the August primaries, you know how people can, if you want someone like you in, then which one of those Republicans would be the best Republican for you to go against that you have the best chance of winning? Because one of the strategies that people could use who are Democrats would be to register as Republicans so that they vote for the Republican that has the least chance of winning against you in the August primary, which is going to give you the best chance of winning in the fall. So who do you consider to be the weakest candidate that you think would give you the best chance of beating in the fall?
I guess I would encourage Democrats to stay home and vote in our primary, but people have a lot of local reasons for voting in primaries as well as other reasons. I think, without being too explicit, I think the clearest contrasts that could be drawn are between myself and Harriet Hageman. I think that's probably the person who's the most different from me, and her positions are firm and set, and she appeals to a defined group. I don't know if that answers your question, but what I really fear is Democrats voting in the Republican primary for the least bad Republican, and I don't think that has necessarily served us all well for the last several years.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Lois Peterson, your hand is up, and you now have the mic. Go ahead, Lois.
Yeah, we got a questionnaire over the phone today about from one of Barrasso's campaign people, and they said a lot of things about Dodson that they, how do you feel about this and that type of thing. I'm wondering, the people in the Republican Party ostracize you for your views? I mean, not just Barrasso, but the Republican Party. Do they ostracize you for the views that you put on your website?
And that's geared towards me or Mary, I assume.
Oh, I'm sorry, for Dodson, yes, candidate Dodson.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm running against a candidate, John Barrasso, and I'm also running against the system. And I'm not naive. I understand that the system circles the wagons around the incumbent, and I don't think that's unique in the Republican Party. I think that's also true in the Democratic Party. It's frustrating, but it's subtle because the party is supposed to run a free and fair primary. And so what I observe to be times when, someone's thumb is on the scale is always very subtle. And but I haven't been overtly ostracized. I mean, my Republican values, which are, really kind of rooted in my early years when I watched Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill work so heroically together. I mean, those are two fine people who didn't necessarily begin with the same set of solutions to common problems. But boy, they always put America first. And that's kind of my touchstone, is that, those 80s when Republicans and Democrats could disagree on solutions, but never disagreed that in the end the problem had to be solved, and never had trouble going out for a beer or a glass of wine or having lunch together. I just long for those years. And I think both parties, I'm more steeped in the day-to-day of the Republican Party, but I think both parties have decided that, their job is to just yell at the other side. And so because I don't embrace that, I don't feel that way, I don't line up in lockstep with the Republican Party. Not this Republican Party, but, Ronald Reagan used to be a Democrat, as most people know, and he said the Democratic Party I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. And I haven't left the Republican Party, but there's a lot that goes on in the Republican Party that I just roll my eyes and go, that's not about the people, that's not about Americans, that's not about citizens in Wyoming, that's just about winning. I didn't really answer your question directly, but you made me think about some stuff, so I babbled on, sorry.
Thank you, Dave. This is Shelby. I'll just say I yearn for those days as well. I just think that the fact that folks on both sides of the aisle can't go have lunch together or have a beer or coffee together is they're too busy raising money, and they've got to, and the parties make them go and dial for dollars, and so I just wanted to throw that in there. It's just a comment, not a question.
So I'd like to offer one comment on that, which is that before I decided to run, I talked to a number of former senators, and one who I won't name said that he thought that one of the biggest problems with the Senate right now is going back to Howard Baker's time, who I think was a great senator, but they started these senatorial committees, which then they ended up starting these House committees, which are fundraising. To your point, it's all about fundraising, and that it used to be that say Bob Kerrey and Al Simpson, they were colleagues in the Senate, but Al Simpson's issues with Wyoming and Wyoming voters were his. And as soon as that changed and those senatorial committees happened, all the Democrats were raising money to beat Republicans, and all the Republicans were raising money to beat Democrats. And so the relationship between senators changed as a result, because everybody was competing with everybody else. And this one senator, the way he described it to me, said, that was when he really saw a breakdown in how people work together. So that's what you just said, reminded me of that. And so it's about spending time and money, but it's also the fact that everybody's raising money to beat the other team.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have time, I think, for one more question. And Dale Zimmerly, you have your hand up. Dale, you have the microphone.
Thank you. I have a question for Mary. As in March of 2017, Governor Meade vetoed a bill that would have changed the way that we can carry firearms to government meetings. Would you veto that same bill?
Actually, it's not proper for a governor to threaten a veto, so I've tried to not threaten vetoes as a candidate. However, I have a record on those issues, and I have opposed firearms in public meetings, or at least a statewide ban. If a bill came, I have supported a local option. If the Campbell County commissioners want to allow firearms at their meetings and they're willing to provide the necessary safety for that, then I don't think the state should tell them no. So I'd have to look back at the specific bill to recall whether I had a position on that. I wasn't in the legislature in 2017, but that's been my basic point of view, that if local governments want to do that, then we can give them the option. Personally, I'd hope they don't, but that's been my position.
So I want to thank both Mary. I know it's getting to be 7:30. I know you both have things to do. I'll give Mary and Dave one last shot to say a closing few words, and then we'll say thank you and move on to the rest of our meeting. Go ahead, Dave, first.
I think 2018 and 2020 are going to be landmark years for whether the voters decide to go to the voting booth and take control of their government or not. And I sense a movement afoot, but we'll have to see in a couple of months, in 1 month and then later in a couple of months, whether voters take charge. But I really do think this issue of money in politics, and I also think term limits are in the voters' hands. And so I just encourage everybody on this call, however you feel about this issue, go out and get active. We have about 25% of the people that are projected to go out and vote. And that's sad. I mean, it should be 90% of the people getting out to vote, because this is within our control. So I'm just pleading with people to take control of their government at the voting booth.
Thank you, Dave. Mary, any final thoughts? Mary, you're still with us.
We might have lost Mary. I don't see her on my screen right now.
Okay. All right. She's on my screen still. I don't know what that's about. Oh, she disappeared. All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much. And thanks also to Mary, although she can't hear me anymore, for joining us. And thank you for your work. You're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the call if you like, but we have some other business we need to talk about. And if you need to go, that's fine. If you want to stick around and listen, that's fine too. Thank you so much.
Well,
thank you, Dave.
Your meeting. I slipped out of an event here, a candidate event, so I should probably get back in there and shake some hands and answer some questions. But you guys were really kind to let Mary and I spend a little bit of time on the phone. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, doke.
All right, goodbye. Okay, so we do have some other business we want to bring up with everybody, and a few announcements and some help that we want. And also, but at the end of the meeting, I want to leave some time for questions or comments, and also just a chance to report in. If something's going on in your county that you're proud of and you want to share with everybody else, we'll give you an opportunity at the end of the meeting also to weigh in on that. So think about what it is you might want to report on. So first, a couple of announcements. And the big one that I want to talk about is obviously we need to keep cranking our numbers up. They're going up, but not as fast as I'd like them to be going up. So we need to get more volunteers on the ground with petitions, circulating them. And one idea that we've had that seems to be working out a little bit and may work out really well in the next couple of weeks is to recruit some people from an organization called Wolfpack. Some of you may have heard of Wolfpack or know what they are, who they are. Wolfpack is a national organization that is working on this issue to try and get money out of politics and overturn Citizens United. And they have a pretty strong volunteer effort in many states. And they're pretty energetic. So what we've done is we've approached Wolfpack. We've been working with them on some things, so they know who we are, and they're very supportive of what we're doing. We're reaching out to them to see if they can put out a call to their volunteers, not only in Wyoming, but in surrounding states. They've got a big effort, a lot of people in Colorado, in Idaho, Montana, the nearby states. They've got a pretty well-developed list of volunteers. And it turns out you don't need to be a resident of Wyoming to be a circulator. So we're going to try and reach out to Wolfpack and see if they can put out a call to their volunteers to come to Wyoming for a weekend or for a week and be a circulator. And, by the way, see the Tetons or go camping in the Snowies or do something, see our state. So, and that's what I want to put out to everybody for help. I'm going to be going to Salt Lake City in a couple of weeks, August 10th to the 13th. Wolfpack is having I'm not sure if it's national or regional organizational workshop where a lot of volunteers are going to be there, and I want to be able to go to that meeting and say, here's some opportunities for circulating petitions in Wyoming that you can actually put your passion into action. So what I'd like to do before I leave is to have a plan about if you had a group of volunteers coming in from someplace for a discrete, short effort, how would you use those volunteers? Where would you put them? What would you do? Would you have them go door to door? Would you have them go out to a day of action canvassing? Would you have them go to events? Think about it. I'm going to be asking all the county team leaders. I see several county team leaders here on the call, but I'm going to be sending out a request to all county team leaders in the next day or two. Tell me what you would do with your volunteers so when I go to Salt Lake City, I can say, here is a list of opportunities that you can sign up for, come to our state, and help us gather signatures. And I'd like to have that information by August 3rd so I can put it together and be ready to go when I go to Salt Lake City. Second point, and it's related to the first point, is we are going to talk about, and I want to have Shana weigh in on this in a second, our statewide field organizer. One idea that Shana had is a great idea, and we're going to run with it, is to have a big statewide day of action trying to get as many people out as circulating as possible on August 21st. Reason being, that's primary election day. So what our idea is to have basically canvass parties in as many counties as possible and get teams of up to 10 or 20 volunteers to go to polling places and stand as close as you're allowed to get, and we have some rules about that, but go to the polling place where you have a registered voter trying to go vote. You know they're registered because they're trying to vote, and see if we can start gathering signatures that way. And that's one thing that we might have our Wolfpack volunteers do from coming in from out of state on August 21st. They don't have primaries in their states that day, I don't think. So hopefully we'll be able to get some volunteers there. So Shana, do you want to talk a little bit about how you see that day of action working? You have the microphone.
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me? This is Shana.
Yes, we hear you.
All right, awesome. So, yeah, as Ken has said, we have interest in volunteers from WOOFPAC coming in and helping to get some signatures, and what a better way to capitalize on their experience and just primary day election energy than by having polling place parties. We're seeing that polling place parties, like Ken said, would be a group of at least 10 to 20 volunteers armed with campaign signs, petitions, and volunteer sign-up sheets, staging at least 100 yards away from a polling place. The primary election day, August 21st, is just an absolutely great way to gather signatures because every single person you see that day who's parking their car and walking into that polling place is a registered voter, and they obviously care about what's happening in Wyoming. These events, these parties would be a really critical part of our strategy to introduce our campaign to new supporters. So maybe a lot of folks who haven't heard about us yet, they would see us as they're voting. So our goal, ideally, I think, would be to organize at least like 30 events like this throughout Wyoming on the election day. And today we've put together a really great guide designed to help folks prepare for the event. The materials will probably go out in our wrap-up email. And it touches upon like 6 major steps to hosting a party. We'd want you to set a time, a date, and a location. We can send you a list of all the polling places in your county. Ideally, you want to choose 1 or 2 where you think you could maximize visibility and like which polling places are the most popular. Where do most folks go? If they're driving through town, where are they going to see you sign waving? And also, this is super important. Like, you need to be at least 100 yards away from a polling place because there can't have any electioneering. So, like, don't set up a table or petition in the parking lot. Like, that is super important. We need to be at least 100 yards away from that actual polling place. You're also going to want to set a time that's where most folks will be out voting. So, like, either that's breakfast before work hours. Maybe you guys want to go during lunch, like from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., or after work, where I think we'll probably see a lot more folks, like from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then stuff from we really do want to have these polling place parties to be very visible. So the goal is to have at least 10 volunteers, right? Because you want to have at least 2 people setting up that table where you keep all your snacks and your water and your campaign materials, but at least 8 other folks sign waving along the sidewalk, passing out literature, stickers, and recruiting volunteers with sign-up sheets. Because a lot of the folks who are going to be like, yeah, I'll sign it. I honked for fair elections, and I decided to stop and sign your petition. You need to ask them to volunteer. You need to ask them to now donate. And step 2 would be creating a recruitment list. Definitely, if you're going to have a polling place party or any event, you should definitely invite the folks who have volunteered in the past, who are dedicated volunteers, a part of your team. But you also want to brainstorm a list of new volunteers. And that means sitting down and thinking about every person you know, like your friends, your family, coworkers, people in your church or synagogue, members of your volunteer groups, and try to come up with at least 30 people you can invite. And that we can also send you a list of folks who have either online or through social media, signed up and said that they want to volunteer in your county as you get closer to actual election day. Step 3 would be actually inviting the network, calling those folks, telling them to show up. And this is a big thing. If our goal is 10 people volunteering at a party, we need at least 25 people RSVPing because a lot of folks will drop off and cancel. And we really want this event to be successful. So we're going to keep calling those folks and confirming them directly before the polling place party. So probably August 20th, August 19th, you're going to call them, make sure that they're showing up. You're going to want to do a walkthrough through the space, where will people set up a table, where will people sign wave, that sort of things. And then during the event, actually training volunteers on how to talk to voters about signing our petition and why we're there. And also too, with this guide has a really good breakdown week by week about like what sort of actions you can do to prepare for it, like sending the emails, making your phone calls, creating that tracking list. And myself, Shayna, and I'm sure Jen are available for any questions that come up, or if there are any like volunteer recruitment that needs to happen. And I'm super excited. And I think that's all I really have left.
Okay, and we will be sending those materials out in the next day or two to all the county team leaders, along with the other information I've been talking about. I have one question for you, Shayna. When you say the 100 yards from the polling place, how is polling place defined? Because the polling places, I think of them, are indoors, and parking lots wouldn't be a polling place. So, I mean, if I have to be 100 yards away from a parking lot, that's kind of limiting. And I know when I go vote, I go run the gamut of people outside the building who are handing me stuff. So what do you mean by 100 yards from the polling place?
I think we can clarify. I'll call the Secretary of State's office tomorrow, but usually, and from what I've understood, it's always been like 100 yards away from like the door.
Right.
And sometimes the parking lot would fall under that. And then I've known folks who got in trouble for like, putting like stuff on people's cars or stuff, because like technically that falls within the polling place, or it might even be whatever like the fenced in area of that, like. For instance, we have ours at a high school, so anything that's fenced in within like the high school is considered, the whole thing is considered a polling place. And then we have to do 100 yards from wherever that fence, starts.
Okay.
I'll call the Secretary of State, and maybe you can specify that more so in the guide as well. I'll answer that question.
Yeah, we'll clarify that. Okay, thank you. A couple more things, and then we'll get to some questions. Want to do a quick update on numbers. As I said, the numbers are going up, but not as fast as I would like them to be going up. We're right now just under 13,000 verified that we know of voters, of signatures. We have many more than that we are not certain of. Some of them may be valid, and I do know that we still have some petitions out there that have not been shown to data manager. So we know we're well over 13,000. But that's only a third of what we need, so we've really got to ramp it up very quickly here to get to where we need to be. I wanted to call out a couple of counties that are doing fantastic. The leader in the clubhouse right now, Johnson County. Lois, you're still on the call. According to the numbers we just got, you are 48 signatures away from success. You are at 94% of goal right now. And 48 more signatures gets you to your goal, and that's fantastic. We have two counties that are doing very well at 69% of the goal. Albany and Sheridan both are at 69%. Sheridan had a big bump. The biggest raw number added to the vote to the total since last week was from Sheridan County, so you're doing fantastic work up there. We also have Fremont County had a big bump, and they're at 61%. So those counties are doing great. We need to get some other counties on board. So we will be in touch with other counties that could. And if you have any needs, please let us know. Contact us and let us find out how we can help you achieve success. One more thing that I have to comment on, and then I'll open it up for Shelby or Lynn or anybody else who wants to jump in, or any of you who are on the call. If you have a question, I'll give you the chance in just a minute. My last comment before we open it up is I wanted to report that we are gaining some momentum on our Plan B. Plan B is to go to the legislature in January. If we get enough signatures to be on the ballot, the legislature has to have an opportunity to vote on it, so it will almost automatically be on their agenda if we have enough to be on the ballot. If we don't have enough to be on the ballot, we still want to be going to the legislature and saying, look how many signatures we did get. We didn't get all the way there, but we got a heck of a lot, and we've got a heck of a lot right now. But we need to have sponsors in the legislature, and we actually do have. I think you've all seen that we have asked all of the legislative candidates to take a survey and tell us whether they support our work, yes or no, and if they want to be listed on our website. We have a bunch on our website now. People are signing up and putting their names on our website. One of the questions in our survey was, if elected, would you sponsor a bill to do this? And we have two incumbent legislators who said yes, Republicans who said, yes, we will, in fact, sponsor a bill. And I lost that email. It was Dave Northrup from Park County, and who's the senator? Shelby, do you remember the senator's name? He's also from Bighorn.
No, I'll look back on that email and I'll put it in the recap so folks can get in touch.
So we have two incumbents who have stepped forward to say they will sponsor. We have others who have stepped forward and said they will co-sponsor. So we're making some progress on getting some support in the legislature to get this done. Even if we don't succeed with our signature drive, we're hopefully going to be able to get it into the legislature and acted on there. So that's the other thing I want some help with from all of you on the call. If you know a legislator who might be willing to be a co-sponsor, please contact them, or a candidate who's not yet listed as a supporter. Contact them, get them listed on the website, and hopefully get them to become a sponsor of the bill if they're elected. So, Lynn, you have your hand up. Lynn, you now have the mic.
Thank you, Ken. I think that was Ray Peterson from Bighorn County.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, so and then yesterday I was we have the Park County Fair going on all this week. So we've got a booth there. Jen, I don't know if is Jen on the call?
No, she's at the booth.
Yeah, I didn't know if she was going to take the call from the booth or not, but she really has put together a great booth, and so we've been manning the booth. And so yesterday I spent probably 7 hours there at the booth, and so I just, I always think it's a good idea to talk about, to problem solve the resistances. So, so that we can talk about it and see what we can do about it. One of the incumbents running again for legislative seat, Dan Larson, just flatly won't even talk about it, won't sign the petition, won't say why, won't say why not, just totally clams up, and which was very interesting. I'm strongly suspecting that he's a Republican, and I suspect that he's getting a lot of support from ALEC organization, just the way he was responding. Other Republicans that I talked to, some of the main concerns, the whole, constitutional convention comes up, and they're, very, very emphatic about it. And it's an opportunity, of course, for education, to talk with them about, this is a limited constitutional convention, but you just get the sense, that the Republican Party has hammered this through to them, and, they're just not going to budge. They're not going to change their mind on it. And then the other thing has to do with the First Amendment, that this is violating corporations' free speech rights through the First Amendment. So those are the two resistances that I get when I talk to some people that will not sign, and so we've talked about this before, that it's not worth it for some people, spending a lot of time with those people. Once you see that they're pretty intransigent in their stance, but those are the kinds of things that I'm hearing, and there's a lot of, I think, fear going on, drumming up fear, that's causing people to be hesitant in signing the petition. That's at least what I'm finding on the ground. You can't do that because then you're going to, break apart the entire United States Constitution, and so it's right. That's made it a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, although on the other hand, I've had some conversations in which somebody raises the question of Article 5, and I say, yeah, we are actually going to call for Article 5 convention. They say, thank you, where do I sign? So there are a few people who actually understand the issue and say they think Congress won't do it, so why bother even asking? But if we're going to go Article 5, I'll sign for that one. So I've had a couple of those. They're not they're the exceptions, but they're there. So thank you, Lynn. That raised one other point I should have mentioned earlier, and that is we are going to have a table at the State Fair in Douglas, and that's August 15 to 19, I believe, in Douglas. And we need volunteers to help staff it. I'm going to be there. My wife and I are going to be there for the first 2 days of it. But we need more than just two of us. We need a lot of volunteers to be there. So if you're going to be in the Douglas area or you're going to the State Fair, you want to spend an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, you want to spend some time at our booth at the State Fair in Douglas, we can use the help, bring your petitions, and we'll get signatures at the State Fair. And that's a great opportunity because we're getting them from all over the state. So that's going to help out all the counties that need help. We can get some signatures there. So with that, Shelby, I'm going to unmute you. Is there anything you wanted to add, Shelby, before we open it for questions?
No, I think all those were really great points. The Article 5 thing, I agree with Ken in being out for hours and trying to get signatures. There's some folks, especially when it comes to like a balanced budget amendment, that's passed in a number of states, including Wyoming, and there's a lot of folks that want to get that on the that agree with that and don't fear an Article 5 convention, a limited amendments convention at all. So, but there are folks that do fear that, and so be diligent. And we do have good talking points and resources on our website to address those issues. And that's pretty much what I have to say as far as that's concerned.
Okay, so are there any questions from anybody or comments? Anybody want to share a success story with us? The floor is open for whoever has a question or comment. And I'm not seeing anything right now.
I do see a few hands coming up. I'm going to go to Diane Ernst. You are unmuted.
Okay, I was just going to mention, I thought Chris and Sheridan had a really good email out about that free speech point. And she was saying you might want to compare, everybody gets to speak, but if one guy has an electronic megaphone and the other guy has laryngitis or, just his normal voice, that's not exactly what we're looking for, and that's essentially what the money does, is magnifies their voice. That was the one point. And then the other thing, I'm a little concerned. I guess I'm still getting over my shock that Mary was the only governor candidate that was supporting Wyoming Promise, and I'm wondering if anybody else is running into this becoming, people are thinking this is a partisan thing. Are we getting the point across that this is cross-partisan, or if we need to address that up front when we talk to people? I'm just curious what other people's experience has been on that.
That's a great point. I do want to point out that when I watched the debate, they were rotating who got the answer first, and on that question, the first answer was from Harry Hageman, who is clearly not our friend, and she's the one who started raising all this stuff about, it's a violation of free speech to regulate corporations, blah, 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 and I think she set the tone, and everybody else fell in line behind her, and I don't want to slander anybody, but there were two candidates on that stage who had, in fact, signed our petition and then denounced it, including one who signed it that day. I'm not going to use any names, but there was a lot of herd mentality going on there. Somebody signed it at that event before the event started, and then when that question came up, he said, no, I don't support it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a herd mentality. They saw Harry a very strong stand against us, which wasn't surprising. But everybody else was cowed by that and fell in line, even though some of them actually do support us or have signed it. 2 of them have signed it. It's shocking to me.
Okay. So, well, that's good to know. Maybe just that one shot thing isn't telling us everything.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, and now I don't know why I didn't see the hands go up, and you did, Shelby. My computer's running slow, but I see Lois's hand is up. So, Lois, you now have the microphone.
Yeah, hi. Just a comment for somebody who might be there from Powell, or if you as administrators of this could get this message on. I talked to someone today here, and they said Harriet Bloom Wilson. I don't know that person, but that person is evidently a mover and shaker in Powell and would be a good person to be a petition carrier. So if you could get that message to somebody in Powell, that would be great.
What was that name again?
Harriet Bloom, Bloom Wilson.
Okay. Lynn, do you know Harriet?
I know Harriet very, very well, and Harriet is one of the founders of the Women's March that then became called Wyoming Rising Northwest, or Wyoming Rising. So she's a mover and shaker with that organization. While she is very, very supportive of what we're doing, she has not agreed to be a petition circulator. I attend most of those meetings, and I ask for volunteers, and she hasn't stood up, to do that. And I think it's just because she's got her hands full with, what she's doing in a leadership role in Wyoming Rising. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any other comments, questions, thoughts?
It looks like we have Sarah Salty, who has their hand up. So, Sarah, in Albany County, feel free to, you have the mic.
Thank you. So I just wanted to mention kind of a minor success. So Albany County has kind of stalled over the last few months. And today I sent out an email that seemed to have kind of lit a fire under a few folks, and I've gotten a little more response from people saying, I can't make the meeting, but I will, can I come pick up a petition? And another person or two saying, I'll come to your meeting after this other meeting. So the good news is we have a lot of people very active in various activities here, but it also sometimes spreads people thin. But I'm seeing a little more reaction and a little more fire for maybe to get Albany County's goals accomplished.
All right. That's good news. Oh, okay. Anybody else with a comment, question, success story?
And if Ken and I are unmuted at this point, if anybody has any other questions or concerns or anything, feel free to press any number on your dial pad at this point. But I just want to say in closing for myself, unless there are any other questions, thank you all so much for being on the call for sure. And it was good to hear from candidates, and we don't support any candidates as Wyoming Promise, but we do really encourage folks to vote and get out there. And we're happy if you look at our supporters page. That can help you determine your who you want to vote for potentially. So I do see Melody Nielsen with a hand up. So I'm going to unmute Melody real quick, and you have the mic.
Hi, everyone. It has been really interesting in the fact that, like last Friday at the plaza, there were 6 people who were petitioning, and they were in groups of 2. And I think every one of them got around 30 signatures. It was really marvelous to see how they worked, and that was like in 2 or 3 hours. The one thing I wanted to bring up for both Ken and Shelby is that one of my petitioners worked for the legislature. That was his job. He is not a legislator, but he worked at the legislation at the building. And he is very much interested in helping with Wolfpack and getting some involved with the legislation. That's what he did for 30 years.
All right.
That was his job.
You need to put him in touch with Vanda, because Vanda also has a lot of experience, and we're going to be working with Vanda to help us steer through the legislation. But yeah, let's put him in. If you could email us his name and also put him in touch with Vanda, we could put together kind of a task force to work that angle. So thank you very much, Melody. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and Melody, send that contact information to me, and we'll get that going. Vanda is going to be on our next steering committee meeting, I believe, next week before Vanda leaves, and Vanda is precious as far as the legislature is concerned, as you know. So thank you.
And also so is John, because he worked there just like she did. They both worked at that was their income level, their income thing. So he was very excited about it. When I asked him, he said he'd already thought about that. So
excellent.
That's great.
That was what he wanted to do.
Get with that effort. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see one more hand has gone up. Kathy Denman. Kathy, over in Rock River, you have Rock Springs. You have the mic.
Well, Mike just answered another phone call on the house phone, so I honestly think it probably got confused. No, we don't have any questions right now.
Okay. All right.
Keep up thank you for all you do. Kathy and Mike, you guys are great, so keep it up.
Thank you, Shelby.
Okay, so not seeing any more hands up. Shelby, do you see any that I don't see?
No, we're going to have a conference call in 2 weeks, and we are hopefully going to have a couple more candidates on that conference call, Travis Helm and Charlie Hardy. That's our goal. And then 2 weeks after that, we're hoping to get Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream on the call. He's a big supporter of getting money out of politics and has Stamp Stampede. If you don't know about that, I'll share it in the recap email. And do keep in mind, we do have a recap email. It'll have a recording of this that you can share with other folks that may not have been able to join the call. So keep an eye out for that. And but again, in a couple weeks on our statewide conference call, we want to check in again. And hopefully we'll have a couple more candidates there. So keep up the great work. Now is the time to keep pushing forward. Ken, do you have anything else?
No, other than when we were in D.C. for the National Leadership Conference, Ben Cohen served me some Ben and Jerry's ice cream. That was pretty cool. And hopefully he's a huge supporter, and hopefully we'll be able to get him to join a call. All right, so thank you, everybody, so much for all your hard work. We've got basically 14 weeks left, and we've really got to keep cranking them out and get going. And I will be contacting all the county team leaders in the next day or two with some specific questions about how we can utilize Wolfpack volunteers and also distribute some more information. So thank you all for joining the call, and we're a little over time, so thank you once again, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.